And so it's not really surprising then that we treat our Christmas celebrations exactly the same way. Everything about our celebration of Christmas has to be perfect, and we stress over it, and we do all this work to make sure that the tree is perfect, and that the dinner is perfect, and that everybody gets all the presents that they want, and that all the shopping gets done on time, and that everything's just absolutely perfect, so that our Christmas celebration corresponds perfectly to that perfect baby in a perfect manger. And that if somehow that doesn't happen, if it doesn't live up to all these expectations, if the day is not just absolutely pure bliss and unadulterated joy, then somehow we've failed in our Christmas celebration. That somehow that's the whole point of everything, is to just have this, cataclysmic level of happiness on this one day, for everything to be picture perfect and just right. But, the funny thing is that that's just not how Luke tells the story of Jesus' birth. And like I mentioned a little bit already, it's just not really like any birth story that we ever hear. I mean, I can imagine that for those of you who have children, that your experience has been similar to mine. That the birth of my two children they were two of the messiest, most awkward, bloodiest experiences of my entire life. Really nothing else quite compares. And so I wonder, knowing that that's the experience of the normal birthing process, I kind of wonder to myself if, as Christians, we believe that Jesus is truly human. I mean, of course, we believe that he's the Son of God, but we also say and have always said that he is fully human. If that's the case, then why would we imagine that this birth story would be any different? I mean, why do we come up with these idealistic images of Jesus' birth and try and make it something that it's obviously not? And in fact, it seems to me that contrasting Jesus' kingly nature with the ordinary and even lowly nature of his birth is precisely part of the particular point that Luke is making in the way that he tells the story. I mean, look at how Luke begins to tell the story of Jesus. Right there in the first verse of chapter 2, Luke says, "Now in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken of all the inhabited earth. This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria." Now, in telling us that, Luke is giving us a little bit of historical background. He's giving us some context. He's setting the scene for his story, because Luke is a professional storyteller. He knows how to tell a story. He knows that you have to set the scene to kind of give everything some context. But really, he's doing more than just that. This is more than just a historical side note. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I talk about the birth of my son, I don't ever bother to say that he was born during the Obama administration while Pat Quinn was governor of Illinois, because details like that seem completely irrelevant to something as personal as the birth of my own child. But for Luke, those kind of things, the notes about the historical rulers of the day, the superpowers, if you will, those who were in charge in his day, those are relevant to the birth of Jesus. This is because Luke wants us to see right away that this is not the birth of just another Jewish boy. It's not merely a personal family event, but one that has significance for the whole world. In fact, when many in the Roman Empire spoke about Caesar Augustus, the emperor at the time, they used words to describe him like Lord and Savior. In fact, Caesar Augustus was known as one who had brought peace to the entire empire. And so, in our story of Jesus' birth in Luke chapter 2, when Luke tells us that Jesus when Luke tells us that Jesus is born and he calls him Lord and Savior, and the angels proclaim that he has brought peace to earth, this is not just a coincidence. Luke didn't just pull these terms out of nowhere. Luke is saying in the story that he writes exactly what all the earliest Christians believed. That even though Caesar proclaimed that he was Lord, and the others proclaimed him as Lord, and that he was Savior of the whole world, and that he was the one who had brought peace, the early Christians said, no, whatever Caesar's done, he is not the one who has brought peace to the world. That person is Jesus. Jesus is the one true Lord, the one true Savior, the one true Prince of Peace. Now, of course, we might expect that if Jesus really were all of these things, if Jesus really were so important, if he was so important to be mentioned right alongside of Caesar Augustus and Quirinius, and if he really is Lord and Savior and Prince of Peace, then it might be reasonable for us to expect that his birth would be announced in Rome, the capital of the Roman Empire, or if not there, at least at the temple in Jerusalem, the center of the Jewish world, and the most important place in that region of the empire. And that wherever it was announced, there would be streamers and trumpets, and all the important people would be in attendance, and there would be a great big feast, and everyone would celebrate it, and just all of the VIPs would be there so that they could celebrate the birth of this very important person. But, of course, we know that's not what happens in the way that Luke tells the story. Instead, Jesus is born in a village that was relatively small. Chances are it wouldn't have even had multiple inns, if even a single inn.